Hey everybody, Watch This Review here with, Watch This Review's Halloween movies to watch. So, it's basically Watch This Review presenting you, the viewer, with a list of horror films to watch for Halloween. 10 films, no particular order. I mean, some are more serious, some are scarier, some are funnier, but you know what? All of them, awesome! And I'll also mostly be ad-libbing because I don't feel like editing a ton for a video like this, but let me get started. For one thing though, I won't be doing the really well-known stuff because odds are you know it, you already know that you should watch it, and either you have, at which point I'm preaching to the choir, or you haven't and you probably have some good reason for it, so more obscure stuff. But number one is a film directed by John Carpenter of Halloween fame, and it is In the Mouth of Madness, which, is a very Lovecraftian throwback. I mean, it tosses a lot of those themes out there, but involves an investigator who's sent to track down this one author whose book supposedly has been driving people a little bit mad. But the company's hired him to bring this book back so they can publish it, despite the fact that one of the previous editors attacks him with an axe in one of the early sequences of the film. So, it's definitely got a whole comedy vibe going to it, despite having some legitimately spooky moments, and it really mixes it up throughout the thing, especially blurring the lines between fantasy and reality, culminating towards the end where, I won't spoil it for you, but definitely a solid watch. It's a pleasant mix of a variety of things. Now, number two is one of my all-time favorite werewolf movies, but for whatever reason just doesn't seem to get a lot of love, and that is Howling V, The Rebirth. Now, unlike some of the other Howling movies, where it kind of has the whole werewolf society and werewolf culture, except for part two, which is just insanity / stupidity / whatever, this one's more of a straight, more traditional werewolf movie, where you've got a werewolf. He's just killing people. But I mean, it's not like a reluctant werewolf. Instead, it's like a werewolf mystery, like a whodunit, where we have a group of people who are invited to a castle. And, they don't realize at that point, but, they're all descendants from this one bloodline, which, of course, had spawned werewolves in the past. And one of them is, in fact, a werewolf trying to kill off all the other descendants because, supposedly, according to legend, one of the descendants will kill off the last of the werewolves. But a very cool watch. I mean, it takes a while for the participants to really figure out that there's a werewolf and stuff after them. And, after that, the action really picks up. And, the really cool aspect is it's got, this recurring leitmotif where, it goes the do, whenever it, zones out of a scene or after a kill, where it was a big suspenseful moment, and that's just a really kick-ass theme. But, let's jump to the next one. This one is another John Carpenter movie, but it's more of a comedy. It's They Live from 1988, starring Rowdy Roddy Piper of, I shouldn't need to explain who he is to any wrestling fan, but he's a really big wrestling name for a good number of years. Basically, he plays a kind of construction worker who finds this pair of sunglasses that lets him see that aliens have arrived, and not only have they arrived on our planet, but they've completely taken over and just blended in with us, but are covertly ruling us. If you look at billboards, it says procreate and stuff, or spend money, obey. And when he's just walking down the street, he notices that some people look like these really grotesque skeleton / corpse things, and those are in fact the aliens who are living among us and even sleeping with some of us. Which is actually one of the funny scenes at the end, where, again, I actually can't spoil that for you, but this is also, have you ever wondered where that one, really long chicken fight comes from, if those Family Guy skits? Yo. I mean, sure, they've done it in a lot of other action shows and stuff where they've exaggerated fight sequences, but Piper spends like 4 or 5 minutes fighting against another construction worker just to convince him to put on a pair of sunglasses. Most pointless action sequence in history. But moving on. Severance. This one's really cool. It's more of a comedy, but it's also a slasher, but it's about a company that goes for a outing out in the wilderness. They somehow get like the wrong directions and stuff, so they end up at a cabin where they're being hunted by, some survivalist nut jobs, and of course, eventually, when almost all of them are gone, they do manage to make it to the real cabin where the boss is waiting, and that's actually where the film starts off, because you see an opening kill sequence. But the movie goes on for a bit after that. Very funny stuff. I mean, half the time, one of the employees is just tripped out of mushrooms. They find like a pie just sitting around. They decide to eat it, despite not knowing what the heck's in it. I'll give you a hint. It's human fingers. But yeah, just holy crazy movie. Worth watching. I believe it's still probably on but Netflix streaming. Next up isn't so much a movie as is a mini-series. This is Stephen King's Rose Red. It's actually like 4 hours long, but it's pretty cool. The first episode and second episode are really strong. The third one, not as much. But it's sort of in the same vein as The Legend of Hell House, where you have a group of parapsychologist researchers and psychics going into a house and trying to confirm like the presence and stuff, which actually turns out to be the house itself for the most part. I won't spoil the rest for you, but it is a Stephen King produced thing, so there's usually most of the stuff does transcribe pretty well. Next up is actually one of my recent real favorites. So many times I've considered like making a video review on just this movie, but a lot of my other video reviews kind of fell flat, and it's How to Be a Serial Killer. This movie is flipping hilarious. It's sort of a split between like several different things. For one, there's like this whole infomercial sequence where the serial killer is like giving tips and explaining how to actually do his stuff. There's the in-person thing, whereas the film's like kind of doing this normal stuff where the person's going around, he's talking to people, he's recruiting this loser at a dead-end job who's, I don't know, I guess you can't really say loser at a dead-end job, but, it's a guy whose career really isn't going anywhere, and he's trying to convert him into being a serial killer. And the other sequence is, like, this whole, kind of like, what was that movie? It has a whole natural-born killers vibe where at times they're like talking directly into the camera and stuff. Like it's sort of like somebody's interviewing them for a reality TV show. But it's really funny because he talks about like serial killer philosophies and stuff and like why he's selecting victims. And unfortunately, it doesn't end well, but it does really do its job pretty well. So yeah, entertaining, informative. I honestly don't know if it'd be a great guide if you want to be a serial killer, but, it's worth checking out. Next up is a suspenseful film. It's actually kind of spooky. It is The Fourth Floor. A woman inherits I think it was her aunt's rent-controlled apartment. Her aunt died after slipping on the floor, and she soon realizes that the aunt was in fact murdered, and that somebody's trying to scare her off. It's just really incredibly creepy, especially when she's going through the investigations. Occasionally, like, some of the neighbors, like, just flip in terms of behavior towards her. If you've ever moved into, like, a new apartment or a new condo and you're all alone, it kind of is a sort of scary experience for a while, but especially because it's her first time, like, really living by herself. But next film up is possibly the best slasher I've seen in recent history, and that is Satan's Little Helper. Now, I saw this movie so many times on like video store shelves and stuff, I just passed it by. It's one of those examples why you shouldn't judge a DVD by its cover, because it's actually a pretty awesome movie. It basically involves a little kid who plays this little video game called Satan's Little Helper. I don't know why it's popular, because it looks like something that came out in like the early 90s, where it's its own little console thingy. But while he's playing that and stuff, he runs into this guy dressed up in this weird costume, and he thinks he's actually Satan, so he decides that he's going to help the guy out, and because he doesn't like the guy that his sister's dating, and this guy's going to help sort things out for him. It's also really cool because the serial killer never speaks, and although they do that in a lot of movies, like the Friday the 13th, the Halloweens and stuff, he actually communicates quite a bit with everybody. It's just so sinister how he does it, where he just like gives expressions, he makes gestures, and people read into it and they sort of assume what he means to say. It's really cool. They also have a few death and really almost death sequences that are just absolutely twisted, but definitely worth checking out. Satan's Little Helper. Kind of suspenseful, a little bit comedic, all around cool. Not even sure why this thing's just rated 5.4 stars. That deserves a 10. 10. Next up is another slasher. It's called Dead Tone. It kind of involves like those stupid games of like Ding Dong Ditch and stuff where you just like prank call people. It's not even Ding Dong Ditch, but you know what I mean. But basically in the past, this group of kids called somebody didn't like it. He broke into their house, killed them. Some years later, they're at this one party and they decide to play that game again. And like somebody's like attacks and people start dying and they're trying to figure out whether or not it's the original guy or what have you. Very suspenseful film. Bit of comedy. I mean, very well done for what it was. Next up, is it last? Oh yeah, it's last. Now, I've actually reviewed this film before, and it's a completely awesome film, but I just think so many people miss out on it. It's the story of this complete loser who, has got really nothing to do or anything, and, he's just living on his own with his cat and everything, and when he's walking back to his apartment on Halloween or condo or whatever, he finds a little invitation to a party. But not just any party, a murder party. Now, being that he's completely bored and he just wants to go out and do something, he decides to walk out and actually go to a murder party. And, how stupid can you be? I mean, I'm sure that a lot of people kind of assume it's in theme, but when it's something called like a murder party, might not be a great idea to go to it, which he soon finds out because the hosts of the party are a bunch of artists who want to kill in the name of art to make some sort of a big definitive statement to impress this one investor so they can get some money, but things don't quite go that way. The funniest death in the movie, and mild spoiler here because it happens like the first 15 minutes, is a death by a raisin. Originally, one of the participants is going to like propose an alternate method, not involving killing him. And then, like, when she's, like, talking about it, she opens up, like, this one thing of muffins that he'd brought along, and it has a raisin in it, and she happens to be allergic to raisins, so she ends up keeling over and dying. But I believe... No, I just checked Netflix, and it's not available on streaming right now, but basically, it's kind of a low-budget film, but, it's got, like, a lot of humor, it's got, a lot of stuff going on. Just really parodies the whole sort of art culture and stuff, where a lot of these guys just absolutely hate each other, and they just can't admit what they feel about each other's works. And of course, there are a bunch of twists, but the tagline, "Everybody dies," is basically correct, because by the end, like, everybody dies, but, kind of fun film. Of course, just look at that goofy costume. He dresses up as, like, a cardboard knight. So yeah, in many ways, you almost hope that he'll just get it, but, at the same time, he's the protagonist, you do kind of root for him, but, again, this movie's not rated as well as it should be. I mean, I'd definitely give it at least a 9 here, and I just did. But yeah, those are 10 films that Watch This Review recommends for Halloween, or, just whenever you want to see a horror film. But yeah, until next time, folks.